So is the PS5 sales really that impressive? So we have these graphs. These are provided by VG Charts here. And if you just want more proof that the PS5 is not selling as well as people think it is, okay, selling as amazing as Sony is making it out to be, okay, we have the weekly sales that is updated, throughout week 17, here March of 2020. It is actually selling far worse than the PS4, okay. And this is when Sony said it sold 6 million copies. But this is the real stuff that Sony does not want to show you. Okay? Gap saying in latest week, 30,000 copies towards PS4. Okay? PS4 has sold 140,000 copies. More than the PS5. Okay? And the PS4 didn't really have that impressive amount of a game library and mods. It actually had more exclusives than the PS5, that's for sure. It had more games than the PS5. I have no idea what's going on with next generation of consoles, but the last generation of consoles is outselling this generation. This is the PS4 and PS5 comparison. Okay. But this is the fastest selling console in history. Okay, well, no longer. So, and again, all the mainstream media was celebrating, oh my god, 6 million copies sold. But anyway, look at the sales numbers here. I'm not going to go over how many real copies were sold, because we all know it's probably a bit lower than Sony says it is. Probably around 5 million, excluding scalped consoles goes, as well. But this is versus the Xbox Series X, versus the Switch, versus the PS5 in Japan. And the PS5 selling poorly in Japan compared to the Switch. Okay. And there's no games in the PS5. Okay. And once you want to play as a SDW version of Spider-Man, then then you can be my guest. But nobody wants to play on the PS5. Okay. And I can actually pull up PS5 sales versus Nintendo Switch console sales. Because when Switch came out, everyone was like, oh my god, Switch is the fastest selling console of all of history. Okay? The Switch is actually selling in line with the Xbox Series X. Okay? It's selling in line with the Xbox Series X on this chart here. Okay? And actually, look at this chart. Switch is actually sold worse than the Xbox Series X and the PS5. But again, people didn't really have that much confidence in Nintendo when the Nintendo Switch came out. It took Nintendo, Nintendo hasn't, it took Nintendo Switch, till November. Until November to sell for. Actually, the Switch is selling much better than people think it is. It has actually outsold the Xbox One. Despite most of the games here on the Switch being Wii U ports here. But then we have this. So here, this is the Xbox Series X, PS5, and Sony. I want to have the Xbox. I actually want to see the Xbox Series X is outselling the Xbox One. Because that would be laughable if it is, to Sony if it is. Xbox One versus Series X sales. Yeah, Xbox Series X versus Xbox One. So this is Xbox One and Xbox Series X. The Xbox Series X has actually surpassed the sales of the Xbox One. And the Xbox Series X has no exclusives at all. No exclusive games. And it's selling better than the Xbox One. So the Xbox Series X is actually exceeding the sales of the Xbox One. So Microsoft is actually winning in this. Okay? Microsoft is actually winning. We go to legs. We go to which console is selling better than the previous. It is actually selling better here. There is the gap of the Xbox Series X versus the Xbox One. But PS4 has been unable to outsell the PS4. Okay, has been unable to outsell the PS4. It has been unable to outsell the PS4. Okay. Here, and that is absolutely pathetic, Sony. This is absolutely pathetic. This graph here is absolutely pathetic, Sony. Okay. We also have this is the graph of the PS4 and Switch here. And look at Japan sales. It's just PS5 is the worst selling console in all of history. Okay, and there's no games on the PS5 that are selling. Okay, there are no games in Japan that nobody cares about. What are people buying the PS5 for in Japan? Because it has the word Sony on it, or they're buying it so they can play Final Fantasy 16. I think the only thing that might save PS5 from utter failure in Japan is Final Fantasy 16. But Final Fantasy is already dying in Japan because they're basically westernizing Final Fantasy anyways. Let's look at Final Fantasy sales. So we have Final Fantasy sales in Japan. Okay. Here. And you have, we're gonna exclude Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Okay. Okay, this is Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 15 has sold barely 1 million copies. Okay? That is a drop from the last big Final Fantasy game, Final Fantasy 14. 2.42 million copies. Final Fantasy 7 Remake, oh my god, Final Fantasy's back in Japan. But Final Fantasy 7 Remake is a remake of Final Fantasy 7. That's what it is. Okay? But this is what happens. Final Fantasy was westernized, in Final Fantasy 15. And they're westernizing Final Fantasy more and more in terms of gameplay. And people in Japan don't really care. People in Japan don't want to buy westernized Final Fantasy. Okay? Final Fantasy 16 is probably going to flop in Japan. Okay? But let's go back to Famitsu sales for a second. Okay? Famitsu sales in Japan. Here. I don't think they've here. Yeah, they haven't updated to the Nintendo Switch yet, so I don't know what they're doing here. But if you look at the PS4 sale, PS5 sales in Japan, I wonder who was buying the PS5 in Japan, because no one is buying games and the PS5. Oh yeah, Outriders flopped on the PS5. That's the only game, and it sold 2,431 copies. And there's the Xbox PS4 version. Okay. Then he had weeks where there were no PS5 games at all on the list. None at all. Okay. None at all. Where is the PS5? Apparently it sold 544,000 copies in Japan. But where are the games? That's the problem. Sony has no games. They say there's some coming. They say, oh yeah, God of War's coming. Final Fantasy's coming. But you never know with Sony. They don't even want to sort of fuck up fucking E3, because they're too much of a pansy to show up. Microsoft is willing to show up. Okay? Microsoft is willing to show up. Nintendo's going to show up, but not Sony. What's Sony so scared of? Okay? Microsoft is literally saying they're having games being sold at E3. 4 huge exclusives. What Sony's gonna show at E3? Well, it's gonna be fucking crickets, because that's all Sony cares about. Nothing. There's gonna show nothing at E3. Nintendo's gonna show probably Zelda and Splatoon. Xbox is gonna show Forza and Halo. But where's Sony at E3? Where the hell is Sony? Where are they? Okay, it's games we already know of, but Starfield has been confirmed. Okay, so tip to reveal 4 major exclusives this is for the Xbox Series X. Halo Infinite, Starfield which was going to be on the PS4, but it's no longer going to be on the PS4, 4 and PS5, and Age of Empires 4. All are going to be exclusive on the Xbox. Okay? But where is Sony? Oh wait, Sony is too much bits to not show at E3. There are too much of a bits to show at E3. Elden Ring is going to show at the Xbox One, because of course Sony's not going to show themselves at E3. Sony is just going to sit at the corner making The Last of Us Part 3 and ruining that franchise that lots of people loved, and ruining all the other franchises, turning to look piles of garbage. Meanwhile, the Xbox and Nintendo are going to show at E3. Sony's going to, and I wouldn't be surprised if the new God of War is woke as well. I wouldn't be surprised if the next Spider-Man game is woke. I wouldn't be, because of course Marvel and Disney, I wouldn't be surprised if, Ratchet and Clank probably won't be woke, but a lot of Sony's bigger games will be woke, and they'll be garbage. Because people are sick of Sony, doing stuff, censoring games, for no reason. That's why PS5 is selling abysmally in Japan, because no one wants to buy a PS5 outside of whoever is buying the 10,000 copies a week. Okay? No, all the Sony exclusives are coming out on Switch. So Sony is losing exclusives. And we have this. Elden Ring will show up at Xbox. And might have Xbox exclusivity. That is something that Sony fanboys are gonna be angry about. Sony fanboys are gonna be pissed off that Sony, Elden Ring will no longer be exclusive will no longer be on Sony consoles. And Starfield, of course, will be pulled from the PS4. Even though Microsoft said they're going to respect the PS4 and all upcoming releases, it seems that Microsoft actually is going to show stuff at E3. They're going to show Elden Ring. They're going to show, Starfield exclusive for Xbox. Elden Ring exclusive for Xbox. They're going to show Halo again. They're going to show the new Forza game. They're going to show Age of Empires 4, a game that people have been waiting for a long time. And what does Sony have for E3? Nothing. Fucking nothing. And you wonder why people are sick of Sony. Because Sony, they don't give a crap. They just want your money. That's all Sony does not care. Okay? They didn't show up at E3 2019 either. What were they so scared of? Okay? Sony is willing to censor the games, censor any leaks or anything that criticizes Sony, any leaks or rumors that criticize Sony. It's only when it makes Sony look bad Sony will take down any leaks as well. For example, The Last of Us Part 2. Sony did everything they could to go out and protect The Last of Us Part 2. They got all the media on their side, all the quote-unquote game critics on their side. They're not really critics, okay? And they got all the Game of the Year awards on their side. Sony basically has the entire media, has the entire gaming critics, and basically the entire everyone else on their side, okay? I wouldn't be surprised if the game critics hate Halo Infinite and everybody else likes it, because that's what the game critics do now. They hate, and they don't want to, and again, let's just say, for example, Nintendo. Nintendo was snubbed at the Game Awards, like they always are. Nintendo's always snubbed at the Game Awards for no clear reason. Nintendo's always snubbed. We're not even going to talk about Xbox now. Nintendo's always snubbed. I don't know why. Why is Nintendo? But of course, Sony's games get nominated. But Nintendo, of course, is ignored. And what they make something exceptional to the critics like Mario Galaxy or Breath of the Wild. Okay? But not for any of the other games. Because according to, according to them, Nintendo does not matter. But Nintendo is destroying Sony in Japan. Nintendo destroyed The Last of Us Part 2. Okay? In Japan. Nintendo what, you have mid-tier Nintendo IPs outselling The Last of Us Part 2 in Japan. ARMS outsold The Last of Us Part 2 in Japan. That is pathetic, Sony. The fact that one of Nintendo's worst and most forgotten IPs is outselling your games is laughable. You have Pikmin 3 Deluxe outselling The Last of Us Part 2. Okay, Fire Emblem Heroes, another mid-tier Nintendo IP. Kirby's Style Allies outselling it. Xenoblade 2 outsold. Garbage. The Last of Us Part 2. Okay. Nobody bought The Last of Us Part 2. Ghost of Tsushima did well, but not The Last of Us, because nobody liked that game. No one liked The Last of Us Part 2. You have copies of Last of Us Part 2 sitting there on the shelves because no one wants to buy it. Nobody wants to buy Sony's old garbage. But they'll go around and censor all the anime games, but they won't censor The Last of Us Part 2. They won't. Ever. Okay? They're not going to censor The Last of Us Part 2 because The Last of Us Part 2 is woke. Okay? And I wouldn't be surprised if a large chunk of the PS5 sales are done by scalpers. So we don't know the real amount of sales of actual genuine PS5 sales. I wouldn't be surprised if that's especially the case in Japan. Because no one's buying PS5 games in Japan. So where are the sales coming from PS5 in Japan? No one will ever know. And yep, I think I've gone on for far too long. That's basically it. Goodbye.